Yeah, I'm in my wife's office right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to get rid of my thing
Uh-oh.
here.
Uh-oh.
Got it. Got it. All
He's got the glasses on.
right.
So we were just chatting. How does a Michigan guy survive living in Florida? What is up with that, Dan?
Well, it took a couple of years to kind of start to get acclimated to the humidity. Now, coming down when we were dating, I'd come down, for
Yeah.
so since we started officially dating, the couple
Yeah.
of years before I came down, I'd come down and man, as soon as I opened the door, it's like I'm just pouring. And I had to walk around with a towel on my shoulder all the time. So that kept happening when I was visiting, when I was courting her, I was dating her. Sometimes I used the word courting,
Yeah.
old fashioned. And but that kept happening when I was coming down to visit. And it did to some degree when I moved down here 2 years ago. It took that summer when I moved down. Well, I moved down in October, but
Yeah.
it was still pretty warm. So the next year, the next summer rolls around. I think I'm a little bit better. And then by the end of the summer, I wasn't using the towel.
Yeah.
So you figure this into that second year of being down here, moving out here. I mean, it's hot, but I expect it.
Yeah.
It's not. I expect it to be humid, and I see people around here grew up here, still running around, fanning and complaining. But you complain about it, you act like that. It's worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just give
Worse.
into it. Right. I mean, it's like, yeah, just give into it.
Yeah. You just drink. Make sure you stay hydrated, and sometimes of the day, it's you don't want to walk it. Sometimes of the day, you want to wait till the evening, maybe. But
Yeah.
you just harmonize with your environment. I tell you, it's really nice being a 5-minute walk from the ocean. So that kind of makes up for it.
You get the breeze. Do you get the breeze off the ocean at all, or?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, not all the time, but quite a few times we do. There's a park down there. I think they call it Dolphin Park because there's a statue of either a boy or a mermaid latched onto a dolphin.
Yeah.
Going through the waves. And so it's a big open area, and you see people there. We teach Tai Chi down there, like Sunset Tai Chi,
Yeah.
or the last Saturday in the park. And for a while there, I had a morning, I think it was 7 o'clock in the morning Qigong, from 7 to 8, and we just out there right it's like a little mound, and you walk over there, and there's the ocean. But afterwards, we used to go down and walk by the ocean and stuff. But yeah, it's really nice being able to do that.
Nice. So, my martial arts is based in kind of foundationally in Okinawan Shorin. And
Yes.
if I remember correctly, you have some of that, didn't you? Before you got into Kung Fu, didn't you?
Actually, I did. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I started boxing, and I was like 12. I was around 62 in the 60s. And because of growing up on the east side of Detroit, at the time, it was considered the most dangerous side of Detroit. And it was gang territory. So, you're always in fights all the time. So I figured I better learn how to fight okay. So when, I get my clock clean. So I started boxing, and then my father had a friend. My father's a bus driver, and he had a friend that was a bus driver that was a black belt in Japanese karate.
Okay.
And so for like 2 years, he would come over to our house twice a month, twice a week, and we go down in the basement. My brothers and my father, we start doing our knuckle push-ups and doing the forms and punches and kicks and all that stuff. And so and then I learned how to combine boxing with karate. So boxing, boxing, but with karate, I got elbows now, I got knees, I got feet. So I used to win my fights, at least the one-on-ones. And then, but with gangs, you just have to know what to do because they're always like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 strong.
Yeah.
But you learn how to what not to do, what to do. And, so, but yeah, so anyway, after I graduated high school, I went to Eastern Michigan University. And when I went there, I started studying Taekwondo. So I started studying Taekwondo, and I met, and this was in 72 when I went to Imu. And I met a young lady that I started dating, and her older sister, was dating a guy named Jerry. Turns out that Jerry had just come back from China for 4 years, whatever, studying with a Wing Chun master.
Wow.
And he was getting his doctorates in Chinese philosophy. He could speak fluent Chinese. He's American. And so I met him, and we didn't know anything. We didn't know we did martial arts until we got to talking. He said, "What martial arts you study?" I said, "You know, this and that." Well, his teacher said that part of his training is when you go back to the United States, you got to find a student, one student to pass on some Wing Chun. So I started studying Wing Chun. I did that for about 4 years. And then when I graduated the State Police Academy, it was in 78. I think it was about in 79, I started studying Shorin. And I did that for at least a couple of years, maybe a little more. And then I started Tai Chi Chuan and Wang Chun Temple Boxing, which was comprised of Tai Chi, Xingyi, Bagua, and Shaolin.
Oh, wow. All around. What do you think about, I mean, you've got a vast array. What do you think about that? I mean, yeah, it's neat when you do that.
Well, I tell you, when I was younger, it was just, it was all physical typically. And I tell you what, it didn't matter if he was in the classroom. If a kid wanted you, he'd tackle you in the classroom and pull over the desk, throw over the desk, and they had to bring in people. But when I started studying, the reason I started studying internal was because I went undercover. Okay, when they put me on the cover, it was for a whole year, totally undercover, living over a drug dealer. And I was I was a fence. You know what a fence is? Yeah. Buying stolen property and drugs and guns. And after about 3 months of that, I always had money. And I hung out at the worst bars and the worst neighborhoods. I was living in the worst neighborhoods. So I was meeting all these criminals. And they would come over to my house all times of the night selling me stuff. So I had to act like a criminal. Yeah. And I grew up with criminals, but strangely enough, the people I grew up with, I was in the Boy Scouts with them when we were like 12 and 13, but they didn't go to college and they end up in the gangs, and quite a few of them are dead now and stuff like that. But you had to play this role. Okay. I couldn't even see my family. I was totally under, and all the officers in Lansing knew that I was under, so they stayed away from me if they saw me in a bar. But I always expected somebody to try and rob me because I was alone. I didn't have backup 85% of the time. Right. And so I figured sooner or later somebody's got to rob me. So I trained all the time. I mean, I was training all the time. I had this apartment over a drug dealer, and I had weights and I had weapons and stuff up there. And I tell them to come up to my apartment and we do the deal, and they see all this stuff there. And when I would sit there, I had a friend of mine named Mingo, and Mingo was in the drug unit, the LPD, and Mingo used to confiscate things like brass knuckles and switch plates. He'd give them to me. He'd give them to me, yes. So man, I'm in my apartment upstairs, and I'm dealing with these guys, and we negotiated. I pull out my switchblade, start throwing it in the ground and messing with it. I'm gonna keep it clean because I had a really bad mouth back then dealing with these guys, and they told me the wrong price. So they was 85% of the guys 80% of the guys I dealt with were afraid of me. They knew I was from they knew that I was this, they knew I could take care of myself and all that. So, but still, I figured if they came at me, they were going to come hard. So with guns or whatever, and so I always expected to get robbed. And in the apartment, I didn't want to be taken by surprise. So I had a mattress on the floor, and the bedroom had a high pile carpeting. So you had to really push on it to open it. So I had like things with strings and cans on the door, and I had cans and stuff in the living room where it makes some noise. And I used to take a hand towel and put it right here on the left side, and I put a Zabrani 380, and I had it right on the, and I could reach it in my sleep, and so I started having nightmares, man. I had the same nightmare every single night for like a month and a half, almost 2 months, and I said, I got to do something about this. In that nightmare, two guys, it looked like silhouettes of two guys who had broken into my apartment, and in my dream, the door is pushing open, and I see the silhouettes of two guys coming in with guns. So I grab my 380, I sit up, and I wake up. That same place I would wake up for, for 2 months I had the same night. So finally, this is before I actually started doing internal. This is what made me do internal.
Yeah.
Finally, I had the same dream. I woke up and I was sitting up in bed. I had the gun in my hand and the safety off, but my finger was on the trigger guard because you train not to do that.
Yeah.
And I sat up there. I said, "Okay, this isn't good." I put the safety back on, put the gun down, and I said to myself, "I got to study Tai Chi. I got to balance this external training off with internal training."
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it. And the internal, I tell you what, being out there with domestics and all the different types of things I encountered and being able to calm myself, it was brilliant.
Life-saving, man. It is. It's life-saving.
Life-saving, yeah.
No. Yeah. One of the gifts you've given me tons of gifts in our time together, is the fan. And so what got you into Tai Chi fan and Kung Fu fan? And yeah.
Master David Song. He was when I started studying Tai Chi Chuan, he was my first Tai Chi instructor. They said, go to the corner, Bertram and Hagedorn, and there's a little old Chinese guy there. And if he sees you, he'll teach you Tai Chi. Next morning I got up, I was there at 7 o'clock sharp. There was about a dozen people there, and this little Chinese guy, they were doing what I come to find out later was the Yang 108.
Yeah.
And when he turned around and saw me standing there patiently, he smiled and he just called me over, and he said he motioned to get behind and just follow.
Yeah.
So a year later, I was able to do the 108, but because he couldn't speak English. Well, anyway, once we had the 108, he taught us it's Chin Man Ching's lineage. He taught us the 37.
Yeah.
And then he taught us the Tai Chi fan. So I learned it from him. And after he taught us the fan, his wife passed away, and because she didn't do Tai Chi, and so he moved to San Francisco to live with his daughter. So at that time, it was like 72 movements, and all the other people had forgotten. I said, "Well, I got to remember this fan form because I didn't want it to die." So I did, and by the time you got to it, I had showed it to Dr. Lamb when I started, training with him, and he said he really likes it, but you need to cut it down about 20 movements. And there was one movement in there that you do where you come up after teacup and you do the little thrust.
Yeah.
Well, that movement, you're supposed to do a 360-degree jump turn to do that. And he said, Dan, you might want to take that movement out because we want everybody to be able to do it. So.
Oh no. But you still have the jump kick in it though. Yeah. Right at the front. Yeah. So but as I learned, it was a 52. It was 52 postures. Yeah.
It's 52. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started out, because of course, the first time I had you was in 2013 in Brecksville outside of Cleveland. And Libby and Lynn were the STs for that. And and you did some fan there. And I'm like, that is cool. So then I learned the Yang 18, but then Libby taught me the moving stillness, and I'm like, I still do it. I still do.
Okay, yeah.
I still do it. Betty and I play with some different fan stuff now, and doing some double fan stuff, but I still do the 108 or do moving stillness. And when I was in New York, I had a class of ladies that there were like 10, and they were in their 70s and 80s, and they do TCA. And then they'd stay after for an hour and we'd do moving stillness.
Okay.
And it was crazy because I know, I'm pretty sure that they would go home and they would practice on their spouses. And I'm like, now, because they go, what is this? What is this? And one marks application. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're going home and beating on your spouses. And I can't be responsible for thrusting a fan in their throat or something. But yeah. But no, I love it. Like I said, I still do it today. And and still actually, I'm still got a couple people that I still teach it to. So
okay.
Yeah.
I said the weapons, they help you to extend your chi out through the, and whether it's a sword or a fan, and being able to manipulate that fan. I found that I was moving a spiral up through your body, spirals out in that fan. Yeah.
Speaking of spiraling, and then we talk about silk reeling. I remember we were in outside of Toledo. You did a silk reeling thing at the water park place, and then we went up to and then the next year we were up in where was it? in Michigan somewhere. I want to say Lenovo, but it wasn't. It was somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what got you the silk reeling and developing the silk reeling program?
Well, when I first started Tai Chi, I want to know more about what I'm doing. And I had only studied external, so I got a couple of books about it. I think the first book was The Tao of Tai Chi by, I can never say this master, it's Zhou Shenhua, they call him Master Zhou. And I started reading that. And he said, one of the things that he said was Tai Chi brings you back to the way of the child. So that fascinated me. And then he said, the foundation of Tai Chi is silk reeling. I'm thinking, okay, now what is silk reeling? And he used analogies. He said, if you take a cocoon of a silkworm and you have one strand, if you pull that strand too hard, it just keeps breaking. If you pull it and you stop, it breaks. You have to pull it with one continuous long pull. So what he was saying was, what I took of him to understand was that every movement is Tai Chi. Once you start to form, if it's just a form, is one long continuous movement where you do not break the silk. But I still didn't know what I needed, So I started asking other Tai Chi instructors. I started trying to ask people in person. Nobody would tell me anything about silk reeling. Either they didn't know, or the thing with silk reeling is it's so powerful to your Tai Chi when you do it properly, right. And you develop powerful Fascia. And when you're talking about the old days when there were no guns and stuff, your martial art protected your family, it was your livelihood. It made your Tai Chi so powerful that you were like unbeatable. And so it was a secret. They wouldn't teach it to outsiders. They wouldn't even teach it to the women in the family, because if they married into another family, they'd have to share the secret.
They'd have to give the secret away. Yeah.
Absolutely. So just in-laws had come in. Right? So knowing that, I just kept reading, found other books, and they started describing something. So I started trying to get patterns to mimic what I was reading. So I'd study, I'd practice it. I'd study, and all of a sudden I feel something that feels, okay, I think I'm on the right track. So I just kept that up. And then I started developing exercises to help me do the silk reeling. And then I realized that unless every Tai Chi movement can be a silk reeling movement if you combine mind, body, and breath. But at the time, I would just practice the silk reeling patterns that I was doing, and then I would practice. Stop doing them and practice my form. And then I learned the concept of allowing instead of trying. The more you try to put silk reeling in your forms, it doesn't work. You have to allow. So I just kept doing this, and it took about a decade before I decided to try and teach it. And then one of the first times I taught it, and I had Dr. Lamb's people in it. Well, you remember Russ?
Yeah.
When Russ was around, he was a professor in Minnesota, right. And he invited me to Minnesota to teach silk reeling. And he's the first master trainer that was in my class. Okay, so and Russ was really, I mean, his Tai Chi was great, but he was a, what do you call it? In academia too. So he really went in his head, just trying to figure it out. So anyway, we had a weekend of it, and I passed out feedback forms at the end of the workshop. And he said, Dan, I'll get back to you. I'm still working on my feedback form. Everybody else did it and sent it back. I said, Russ is going to just rip me a new one. He's going to say, what was this doing? I didn't know what he's going to say. It was 3 pages, okay? It's a 3-page feedback form. And his first sentence was, Dan, I wish all my students had come to this class. And I said, oh, man.
Oh, there you go, man.
Yeah. And then he went to talk about how, from his perspective, how it felt. And he even later on got back with me later, because he studied with Master Fun Ha. You've heard of him in California?
Yep.
He passed away. But
right.
Grandmaster Fun, he was one of the more recognized Tai Chi masters in the United States at the time. And he showed it to Grandmaster Fun Ha along with my explanations. And Master Fun Ha, honored me by saying, yes, that's silk reeling. He uses different terminology, but that's silk reeling.
Oh, wow.
And I started getting confirmations without asking for them.
Yeah.
You know, they just would come, and I'm so appreciative, and that would make me work harder to develop more patterns that were easily more transferable to people to learn, so they can transfer it into their practice. And
I mean, like I said, it's not it's your Tai Chi, but it's you know, it moves you into that internal practice. For me, at least,
yeah.
You know, it moves you from the even external Tai Chi into internal Tai Chi, and it's no, it's for me, it was huge. It was a cool step for me. Started
The
playing.
definition of silk reeling is the same as Tai Chi.
Right.
Generated by the feet, directed by the waist, expressed through the hands. And if you take it further, issued through the back. So it's the feet, waist, hands, and back. So when you send energy forward, it comes out through the hands, but it's also through what comes out the back. Yeah. And it's just that's what silk reeling is. I mean, and there's other parts to it as well, but it's the same thing. So then it's really transformed my Tai Chi, and it really helped me to cultivate it. And I just really like teaching it. And now I do it from a healing perspective. So it's more gross motor, contained, targeted silk reeling therapy is what I like to call it. And so then you get all the angles of the joints and things like that.
Yeah. So how did you come to Tai Chi for Health Institute and Dr. Land?
Well, 1999, I saw I think it was Tai Chi. Remember Tai Chi Journal, the magazine?
Yeah, Tai Chi Journal, yeah.
Oh man, I used to love that journal. Tai Chi certification. I had not seen anything about a certification ever. And it was in Tai Chi for arthritis, and it was in New Jersey. His sister, that was the first. Well, there's some discrepancy. Pat Lawson thinks he did it in Florida. Did all of his marketing for his products, his videos and stuff at that time. And so I called and said, you know, I'm a Tai Chi instructor in Michigan. I'd like to attend your workshop. She said, well, we're full, but you come anyway. Okay, so she let me come anyway. I was never, he accepted 25 students, and I was 26.
Yeah.
So I took that workshop, became a certified TCA instructor. And then while he was there, he said in the next year or two, he plans on cultivating instructor trainers. He plans on training instructor trainers. And I heard that. I said, hey, you know, Dr. Land, I really would be interested in that. So next thing I know, he said, you should come to Australia. 2001, I went to Australia, and it was right after the 2000 Olympics.
Yeah.
That were in
Sydney, yeah.
Yeah, and I went to Australia, and it was totally awesome, man. And I went to his week long, and you know, he took us around, and it was awesome, you know. And so when I was there, I took the Chuen. That's when I first started studying Chuen. Master Camelot Fung was my teacher, and but it was so wonderful. And I went again in 2003. I went again in 2003. And in 2003, I said, you know, Dr. Land, Tai Chi for arthritis is doing really well. And, you know, we should do a Tai Chi for diabetes master trainer certification because of the population is overweight and all that stuff. Yeah. And he wasn't going to do it at first. He didn't think we'd get enough people. And so Pat Lawson said, he said, well, you asked the master trainers that we had to see if they would come. Pat Lawson was the only one that said she'd come. But then he contacts me and says, Dan, we're going to do it. There's these nurses in the doctoral research program in Korea. And there's like 11 or 12 of them, and they all wanted to get certified. So we had enough to get certified.
Do it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so 2006, I went back to get certified in the first Tai Chi for, well, I don't know if it was the first, but in the United States, Tai Chi for diabetes master trainer certification.
Yeah.
And Dr. Lamb said, I had got all this material on diabetes, man. I was studying, and we didn't have to learn that much, just the basics.
Right.
And when I did my final testing, how he did it, he said, Dan, you did excellent. And as a matter of fact, you overstudied. You didn't have to know that much. Well, I say,
you do.
Yeah. Dr. Lamb.
Oh, wow. And now you do a lot with nutrition. I mean, talk about a holistic approach. Yeah, tell me about and your working with nutrition.
Well, I've always, even when I was a police officer,
Yeah.
I got into nutrition. I was in my mid-20s, and I was I had been studying martial arts, and then was studying Shorin,
Right.
and I also started eventually studying Chun and Tai Chi Chuan. And I've always had I wanted to take care of my body. So I used to go to health food stores all the time, and I would ask so many questions of the people who work there. And I get some stuff and start reading up on it. And I just started learning about it on my own. And so for years, I probably, a couple of decades, I was just mostly self-learning. And then I found out about the Institute of Integrated Nutrition. It was an online certification program. It was over a year, and I took that, and I got certified as a holistic health practitioner or health coach. And then I started working with it. I had clients that I would do one-on-ones with. I was incorporated into workshops. I started doing nutrition workshops. I would do nutrition and like medical qigong, nutrition and I was combining qigong with nutrition, and just different programs like that for weekend programs. I would bring all the stuff, and I'd actually prepare meals. I did a workshop in Illinois, and I did a vegetarian meal, all organic, right. And it was what was it? It was a soup, or almost like a stew. It had collard greens, black-eyed peas, and kale, and brown rice, and all kinds of vegetables.
Yeah.
And I made it on a big pot on a stove and put it in a crock pot so that we could have it staying warm. Then for the meat eaters, I made an organic chicken noodle soup. So we had like 42 people came. Well, we had about 30 at the workshop, but when we had the dinner at night, about 42 people came, and we had all this food up there. And I thought they were going to eat the meat one first, but they killed that vegetarian. Everybody they ate the vegetarian first. I almost didn't get any. So, and then I would have other workshops where I would do smoothie workshops where I bring in my my Vitamix. I had different kind of blenders to show them the different types of blenders, cost and kind of what you might need. And I would do these different recipes with blending the smoothies and stuff. And but then I would make a lunch dish. So yeah, I would combine nutrition and Tai Chi and Qigong. And people really like that.
It's fun. Yeah, over the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years, I've really gotten into smoothies and really trying to, because you can, it's good. And they're, I always thought smoothies and they were green and they were nasty. And then, and then I started doing them like, well, these aren't so bad. They're pretty good. You could,
well, you can make them taste like you want,
Yeah, right. You just make them whatever. You just put in, as long as you're doing okay. Yeah, you just make it taste like you want. So.
And the thing with smoothies, they are partially digested. Okay, you mix them up, right. And the digestive system doesn't have to work as hard, so you can pull more of the nutrition. You still should eat them like you're eating food. You take them out to kind of chew a little bit, right. And then slowly swallow it down. But understanding that the gut, then the gut. I used to study this, but then it started really coming, more prevalent to people about how important the gut health is. You have more neurons in the gut than you do in the brain, and 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So I knew a lot of this before it really got popular. How fiber is key, crucially important, in the different foods that provide antioxidants to dissolve cancer cells. Cruciferous vegetables, green tea has more antioxidants than most foods that you can think of. And then you have others, the cruciferous vegetables that have a lot of fiber in them. And then you just understand how you eat because you eat for your health, but you also eat for nutrition, and you eat to prevent disease from happening. Right. You can heal from it too as well, but you eat for your health. You don't just do it. Most people eat for taste, and eat a lot of empty calories. And I think that's kind of changing sort of, you get more about it. Hear about it.
Yeah. But mine has definitely changed. I ate for taste for, most of my life. And then it's like, no, I need to prolong my life, and I need to start eating right, it's just like, and you don't have eating right doesn't mean you eat food that doesn't taste good. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's delicious food, you know. I mean, and it's like everybody thinks, oh, it's all nasty food. No, it's delicious food, man. It's good.
yeah, and you want it to taste good, and you're supposed to do that because people won't eat it if it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, and we just learning in general things that maintain good health. I mean, 80% of cancer starts in the colon. So eating enough fiber helps to prevent things like the polyps and things like that. So you help to prevent that type of thing. And cruciferous vegetables like mushrooms, they dissolve cancer cells. They even dissolve the tumors. You know how the tumors are getting okay, if you eat poorly, and then your system gets backed up with undigested food. It just backs up, then pieces up and break off and get in the bloodstream, blows through and say, oh, this one sticks to your kidneys, this one sticks to your lungs. And then if it stays there long enough, it starts to grow into a tumor. And then if it stays there long enough, it gets legs and it goes to blood sources and stretches out. Well, mushrooms can dissolve the legs of the tumor and over time can dissolve the tumor. Knowing things how, and certain vegetables can flush heavy metals out of your system. I mean, it's just knowing that, man. It's just, and why wouldn't you want to hear your nutrition around things like that? And there's so many books now with fabulous recipes with all that health food.
And it's always intrigued me that, I mean, the ancients knew all this. And, we think this is all new. It's like, no, the ancients all knew this. And we're just bringing back an ancient practice that, that they knew thousands of years ago. And we think it's all new. And
well, and from a holistic perspective, that they relate most all illness to dehydration, deficiency, and toxicity. Toxicity, all the different chemicals and things in the air and in your food, and deficiency, not your macro and micronutrients, lack of those. And every time you eat, your body is looking for macro fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. They need all of them in the right proportions. And I mean, for instance, like if you don't have enough calcium in your diet, then your system will say, okay, I'll just leach it from your bones. Your own system starts to take calcium from your bones. So you start what do you call it? You just upset the rhythm of the systems. And hydration, a majority of the seniors that go into the hospital, they're all dehydrated. They don't drink enough water.
Yeah, just drink water. I mean, if you want to start getting healthy, just drink water. You just
yes.
And so you've touched a few times, and what got you into law enforcement?
Growing up in Detroit,
I
had a lot of kids that were hurt, some killed, and just the bullies and the gangs were just rampant there. I mean, you couldn't hardly get away from it. And so when I got old enough, and when I went to Eastern Michigan University, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Matter of fact, I went into music and physical education. Okay, but later on, when I decided, well, what do I want to do? I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then I realized that two of my cousins were Detroit police officers. Two of them were Wayne County deputy sheriffs. Had an uncle that was a detective in Washington, D.C. And then I thought about, now I want to learn how to protect people. And so I said, police work, law enforcement. And then I had to decide which branch. And then I checked out the city, the county, the state, and I didn't want to go to FBI. So I said the state police. And everything I could tell, the state police were next to the FBI was probably the best way to go. So I graduated from the Michigan State Police Academy in 1978 and became a state trooper. So that's why that's literally, I know it sounds corny, but I wanted people. And people say that, but I truly wanted to help people.
And I tell people today, what did you think? Best profession in the world. I mean, and it's like, it's just, the things you walk with people in the midst of everything in life. And it's just, it's just a powerful experience. And
it is.
Yeah. And now you offer law enforcement. Tai Chi is an approach to holistic health.
Yeah. I know, from being a police officer, what we go through.
Yeah.
And whether they say they're stable or not, even if they go to the gym and lift weights, they run,
Yeah.
it tires you out. And to some degree, it can have some release. But dealing with this deep-seated emotional stress and what the things that you see every day, is cumulative. And you have to know how to balance internal and external exercise. So balancing your mental and emotional health combined with Tai Chi is mind, body, emotions, and spirit all rolled into one. And getting them to move and coordinated mind, body, breath is what I did my entire law enforcement career.
Yeah.
And I'm not just something I read out of a book.
Right.
Started when I went undercover, and I did it when I was on the SWAT team as a hostage negotiator, trying to negotiate for somebody on the phone, for 12 hours and all that. And I did it the whole time that I was a law enforcement officer. And I even left law enforcement for about 8 years because I was a little disillusioned. So after about 12 years, I left for 8 years and became a professional bodyguard. And then I went back around 95, 96 and went back to the state police and was assigned to Michigan State Police Senate Division, which was like a secret state level secret service.
Yeah.
So I developed a program based on what I call a gross motor Tai Chi basic motions, and gross motor Tai Chi patterns, and coordinated mind, body, breath. I also incorporated some real subtle circling movements in it to help spiral the energy up. And I tell you what, when I work with people, plus, and I was targeting PTSD as well.
Yep.
But the first responders, veterans, I made it for police officers, but then I realized first responders as a whole and veterans, those are the most at-risk professions that you can be in. So whether you realize it or not, but we all experience PTSD. If you've ever been in a traffic accident or a near miss or what have you, something traumatic could have happened or happened, you can experience a little PTSD if the next time you react to it, so you have a little, very mild. So it's not something that just for that population, but I know how first responders respond to PTSD, and when they don't do anything like Tai Chi. Right. And I realized that in the police academy, they don't address that. The only time they talk about breathing is shooting, and or if you've been shot, recover how to not die, clear in your head. But they don't address the internal aspects. And I'm telling you what, one of my main goals is to get it into police academies. Okay, and I'm going to get it there eventually. But I've used it a lot for veterans as well. And I tell you, in that class, within 15 minutes, when you do it based on the way that I developed the program, their mind starts to settle. Okay? I did a study in 2021. I did a 9-month study, partnered with Johns Hopkins Medical Center in Baltimore, and I was supposed to do the Baltimore Police and the Baltimore Fire Department, but the Baltimore Police decided they wanted to hold off. So I did. I think it ended up being like a total of 67 firefighters. So they would come in for like 40. They would come in for 30 days or something. It was a healing facility. And it was online. It started during COVID, and for twice a week for 9 months, I worked with these guys for an hour, and on the screen, okay, I could see you could feel it when you study Tai Chi. You can feel even through the screen. Yeah. And talking them into the stance and getting them to start the breathing. And watch them start to settle down. Yeah. Okay. And I use the thumbs up and say, how you guys doing? And all 30 of them stick those thumbs up like that. Okay. And it excites you. Just want to keep doing it. So I have boots on the ground people, expert MD, PhD in psychiatry, specializing in PTSD, a neuro researcher. He is measuring startle response, blood, breath, all that kind of stuff. And it took 9 months, and it took a long time to get the data analyzed. And now it's under peer review. So,
Oh, nice.
but yeah, it's under peer review. So and I use the same approach with the veterans. I taught for 6 months a place called After the Impact. This was like, gosh, probably like 8, 9 years ago, maybe almost 10 years, maybe 9, 10 years ago. And Coach Mike Ditka, with retired Coach Mike Ditka and some other coaches and doctors and researchers, they developed this place called After the Impact, when all of the publicity about concussions with
right. Yep.
Yeah, that's why they did it. So they made it for retired professional football players, veterans, and then they decided we want veterans and law enforcement to come in as well for PTSD and stuff like that. So the first 2 months, I had a couple of I didn't recognize them, but they were linemen, a couple of big guys in there, and then after that, it was all veterans. I only had one guy that was a veteran and a police officer, but mostly it got to the point where it was all veterans, and these were veterans that had been hurt. One was missing a leg, and they had one had got shot in his helmet and had seizures, and really, and they had some serious problems going on, and at that time I hadn't developed the gross motor patterns, so I tried. Not saying that at least as serious as they were, I tried swing style first, TCA, and that was a little complicated for them. And then I tried yang, and these guys were in a condition where they would try and do what I was doing, but focusing on choreography was not settling them down. Right. And every so often they would in between times I see them start to get that stare. And they're not responding to you. So I had to figure out a way to not surprise them out of the stare. Right. So I'd get next to them, and in a soft voice, I would say, "John," and they look at me, and then we're going to sit down and we're going to do some breathing practice while we're seated. Oh, okay. And, yes, sir. Military, yes, sir. All that stuff. So we sit down, we do some seated qigong. Well, then I say, okay, I gotta come at this a different way. So I started working with gross motor patterns and still using the Tai Chi principles. Tai Chi principles was the main focus. That was the main focus. So once they got in the Tai Chi stance, then I can take them through these movements, following me and giving them detailed instructions, mirroring me so they can see what I'm doing, and giving them detailed instructions on how every step of the way, the hand holding the whole way, and showing them when to breathe. And they went through the first pattern. We went outside by this little pond in the back at this facility. And one of the guys had 3 weeks, I hadn't heard his voice. He wouldn't talk to me. The other guys were quiet, having stuff. Well, we went through that pattern one time. And I looked over at the guy that never talked to me. And he looked up at the sun and he smiled for the first time. So I had everybody sit down and do some qigong while we were seated.
Yeah.
I told him that we're not going to meet next week. And he looked at me and then he said, "You're not coming back? Are you coming back?" And I went, "Whoa, I never heard, I just heard his voice for the first time." I said, "Yes, I'm coming back. I just have to miss that day because I was traveling or something like that." He said, "Okay, just want to make sure." And then I started teaching him that, and it got through to all of them. I mean, the guys, they loved it. And so I just kept refining it. And so eventually I just, I want to make it so that I can reach,
yeah,
all over.
It'll be good, to get it in the academies and give this, give it to them at the beginning of it, not, at our side of it. It's like, that something they can use and practice in the midst of it all. That'll be cool.
Yes. So, and you can tweak it. I've had some contact with some researchers one of them is a psychiatrist that specializes in PTSD, and they were looking at something, considering this program to help children with issues. This day and age, the children on the P have a lot of issues with PTSD from their own
stuff.
Little children, and I've already had somebody talk about training some of the clinicians, and I did some work. I had a contract to do work for this company that was nationwide, and what they did first for first responders and emergency personnel, services personnel, and with PTSD and all kind of conditions and alcoholism and things like that.
Yeah.
And I did 10 short modules where these people would become a part of this organization, and they can get online, and they have all these programs that they can do online in the privacy of their own homes. So it's like they're having a private lesson. And I did 10 lessons. I like introductory video, and then the person said only keep the lessons no more than 15 minutes, and they can just keep replaying it. And so I did 10 modules for that, and that went really well. So yeah, it's coming around. It's coming around.
That's cool. That'll be awesome. That's awesome work.
It's a passion. You know how it is.
I do know how it is. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, we're going to make this happen. And it's like, yeah. And then have you noticed, 20 years, how Tai Chi and some of the internal work stuff is being more accepted by people? So like, police departments we know is very skeptical, and, fire departments and hospitals and medical. Have you noticed any more acceptance of Tai Chi and Qigong and just breathing? And
I have. It's starting to become more slowly, but more mainstream. See, yoga is always the first thing and you don't get me wrong, but yoga, somebody told me that I don't know, it was in the 60s or 70s when yoga and those things first kind of start getting recognized in the United States.
Right.
They went around to people like spas and things like that. They wanted to be able to have a program like that somebody could do during a weekend. Right. And so they went to the yoga instructors and asked, "Can you create a weekend program?" They said, "Oh, sure." They went to the Tai Chi instructors. They said, "No, Tai Chi takes years to develop." So
yeah.
They put Tai Chi in and accepted yoga. So now we're trying to bring it back to show that you can do that. But yeah, you started to get more acceptance, and just about places where you never would have gotten it before. I've certified some law enforcement officers in TCA when I was in Michigan.
Yeah.
Guys that didn't know what I was doing when they first saw me doing it, practicing at the station. So I think it's growing. I think it's starting to pick up some momentum, and then eventually it'll have the same type of acceptance, and maybe even a little more than yoga. I don't know, but at least on par with yoga with acceptance.
Yeah, that's good. But I think you're right. Look at the history of some of this. Yeah, yoga just happened to get in before Tai Chi, and and so it's interesting.
Yeah.
Rapid fire questions. You ready? How many pairs of socks do you have, Dan?
Maybe 15. I had to quickly think real quick, man.
Yeah, and all colors. Cool. Favorite movie?
Last Samurai.
Oh, you turned me on to the soundtrack of that, and I crank it up all the time. I'm always working out, and then it's like, and people go, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's a soundtrack to The Last Samurai." And Dan Jones turned me on to that. Yeah.
My second favorite now is 10 Rings. It's Chung.
Yeah.
Chung. Yeah, that's my second. Yeah, that's right up there with it now. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. Last Samurai. I was listening to it the other day, actually. So Thorns and Roses. Biggest challenge, biggest success. Thorns and Roses.
Biggest success, it's still in the works, I would say, is getting this program. It's on the road to becoming evidence-based. So that's it's in peer review.
Yeah.
Biggest challenge. Biggest challenge. Well, some of my biggest challenges were when I was younger. My mother was very strict, but she was very strong. And growing up Black in the 60s, we had some issues, and I was the oldest. So a lot of my biggest challenges came as a young kid, growing up as a kid, because I would say that because of the times, I had to, starting at like 5 years old, I had to be responsible. And and I look at 5-year-olds now, and I say, I was never that little. I couldn't imagine being 5 years old, doing what I was able to do, growing up. But of course, it's a different era now, so
Right. Yeah.
it just doesn't work that way. But once I started Tai Chi, things that were challenging, even if they caused a little stress in the beginning, I was able to deal with it and dissipate it and use it. I guess it was a curse and a blessing that I grew up using my martial arts, not just in school, not just in the martial art classroom. I had to fight all the time, and when I was on the road, I was very happy that I was able to control people most of the time without laying hands on them or without hurting them,
Right.
because your emotions are under control. So Tai Chi, they say, in order to learn it from a holistic perspective, meaning yin and yang, you need at least an understanding of the martial. I mean, not to make them Tai Chi martial artists, but just to understand to a point what it's doing. And I was able to impart that in my teachings, along with the internal and the meditative aspects of it, because I grew up rough. I mean, I grew up having to defend myself and having to do things like that. So yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
I tried to have challenges. I remember a lot of challenges as a kid and some as an adult, but by the time I got to an adult, I had learned so much, and you never stop learning. You just keep learning, that I was able to deal with challenges differently. So they may not have been as severe as maybe they would have been if I hadn't studied, in terms of martial arts. And martial arts in general, the physical martial arts teaches you discipline. It teaches you a way to behave, to have some kind of accountability and control over yourself.
Right.
And it teaches you how, right living is. If you have a good teacher, I should say.
Right.
And I think I've had some pretty good teachers.
Yeah.
So.
And I count you as one of mine, actually. So I can say I've had some pretty good ones too. So
Well, I'll tell you what, man, you're one of mine too. As you teach, you learn.
Yeah.
As you learn, you teach. I mean, I learned from my students. I learned from my teachers.
100%.
I learned from people on the street that I only see just from, I learned from little babies,
Yeah.
so.
I know what you mean. It's like you're always open and you're just sucking it in, and it's just like, it's cool. So last two, Earthandcup. So Earth, what grounds you? What grounds you?
My breath, breathing.
Yeah.
I practice breathing all the time. I'm doing a lot more studying and my own research on the science of breath. Yeah. And you study yoga. The things they didn't know about breathing, they've known thousands of years before us,
Yeah.
And it's incredible. I found this book copyrighted in 1905 by a yogi person, and I started studying it. But I had found James Nestor. I don't know if you know that name.
James Nestor. Breathe.
Yeah, I found his book on that, and Olson, him and Olson were the two guys that were involved in that. That just, I always knew how powerful breathing was, but they're explaining from an esoteric and an exoteric perspective how important it is to do deep breathing and how nasal breathing is so important. So, and because coordinated mind, body, breath in the way I teach, and I was using that technique, I've been using it for a number of years now, teaching people with PTSD, first responders and veterans, and how in the first class, every class, they're able to have benefit because of breathing through the nose. Yeah. We're a land of mouth breathers, especially in the United States.
Right.
And
yes,
I was just shocked to know that they can relate most all illnesses, even chronic conditions, to breathing through the mouth your whole life. Yeah. So that's something that I'm really, really openly incorporating into my teaching now. And it's having some really good responses and really good success combined with the benefits of Tai Chi. And the benefits of Tai Chi, they breathe through the nose.
Right. Right. Yeah. And, it's always, the vast majority of us have no clue how to breathe. We really don't. And
No,
going back to learning from a child, just watch a child breathe, because we as adults, we have no clue how to breathe. And so, yeah, to teach people, what are you going to do in class today? Oh, we're going to spend about 45 minutes just breathing. It's like, it'll be good for you. And you may pass out, and that's okay.
So it's something, it's so many, I believe in longevity without frailty.
Yeah.
And these things, like we talk about the breathing, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, nutrition, all these things can bring great health for people. And they don't have to be frail as they start to age. Matter of fact, it's like, it could be like fine wine. And the thing is, you set your intention and you lock it up there.
Yep.
And then you work toward it. Okay.
Yeah.
But you hear people. When I was 25 and I was working, I was in a patrol car with my senior officer.
Yeah.
He's 26 or something like that, chewing tobacco, and he kept saying, I'm getting too old for this. I'm thinking, what?
You're 26.
Right. Yeah. And the mind leads the body, right?
Right.
The mind leads the body, and the mind keeps telling the body, I'm getting too old for this. Guess what?
You're too old for it. You're going to believe yourself. I mean, it's like, I talking to somebody yesterday. It's like, we're going to set positive intentions. I said, no. We're not. No, don't poo-poo this. This is for real. We're just going to breathe and set some positive intentions for today. And they're like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah.
It works, man. And every day I practice. And now I'm to the point where I'm pretty sure, and my wife co-signs this, that I breathe through the night through my nose.
Good.
Yeah. I'm aware the times that I'm breathing through my mouth. When you're talking, obviously you got to breathe through your mouth. You're singing, talking, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm aware, I'm consciously aware that I'm breathing through my nose, or for briefly I'm not. I go back to breathing through my nose.
Yeah.
You make it a lifestyle. You got to make these things a lifestyle. You just can't do them, 10 minutes a day and think it's just going to,
Well, I'll breathe in my breath class on Mondays at 6. It's like, no, you gotta do it with every breath you take, man. It's crazy.
Everyone, it's amazing, man. And I love, and it just really goes. I mean, when I first started Tai Chi, I was thinking, they say it's good for pain, your pain. I'm thinking, okay, how is it good for pain? All right, so the breathing, obviously the breathing part, because of the coordinated breathing, the tip of the tongue, roof of the mouth. And when I got into, I developed 2 courses. Well, it was three. Well, one was pain management, and one was healing fascia connective tissue. I started understanding the concept of fascia, the most abundant tissue inside your body, and it has what do you call it? Sensors in it for pain. They have nerve endings in this fascia, so you can, if you bruise a bruise or break something, the bruise can heal, the break can heal, but the fascia is still damaged, and you still got pain there. And the 2 ways to heal fascia is either fascia release through a massage therapist, or controlled, mindful, slow movement. Movement exercise like Tai Chi Chuan. And Tai Chi is weight bearing. So a lot of times when you hurt yourself, you go to a physical therapist and they'll do, things to get that thing healed. But what is it, when you sit there and just focus on it, but the time you hurt yourself is when you're walking and you lose your balance, and you might hurt yourself all over again. So whole body functional medicine, like healing, like Tai Chi, that's what, because it's functional. It's your whole body, mind and breath engaged. So you're less likely to re-injure yourself. So
I'm a believer. It's like, well, this has been awesome, man. It's been good to sit down and chat again, and I got to come down to Florida sometime. I got to get my vitamin D intake up, so I'll have to come down to Florida, man.
You guys just let me know, man. Let me know when you're coming. I guess I'm kind of a Floridian now. My address is here, and I just redid my passport, and it's Jacksonville Beach, Florida. So
there you go. That's cool. Well, I appreciate this, man, and no, I'll definitely have to come down because I know living with the principals people are all down there. It's like, we just need to get together, and just, it's been so long since we've hung out together. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh my God. we'll have to come down.
It's amazing. Florida is starting to become a mecca for, Betty's here. I'm here. Maureen is here. Merle is in Pennsylvania now.
Yeah.
But all these different people that were involved in delivering the principles and that were master trainers are coming down here
Down
now,
to Florida. Yeah.
So we're gonna workshop.
Yeah, we'll have to. I was just gonna say we'll have to do some big time workshop or something, some weekend. Cool. But yeah, no, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. But no, I appreciate you sitting down with me for a while. And yeah,
Thank you.
It's good, man. It's good to see you, man.
You too.
Mm-mm.